The large classroom was quiet except for the low hum of the air system. This was the advanced xenobiology lab on the deep space station called Starlight Academy. Students from many different worlds sat at their desks. There were tall, slender beings from low-gravity planets and others with tough, leathery skin from desert worlds. Among them were two humans. One was a boy named Gene. He was popular and known for being strong and fast. He sat with his friends, looking relaxed and confident. His eyes, however, were not on the teacher. They were focused on a girl named Sumin. Sumin sat by herself near the back of the room. She was small and always very quiet. While other students talked before class, she just looked at her datapad, her dark hair hiding her face. She was from a planet called Baekdu, a place classified as a Deathworld. This meant it was a planet much more dangerous than Earth. Gene had heard the stories about Baekdu. He heard about its high gravity and violent storms. But looking at Sumin, he found it hard to believe. She seemed so ordinary, so weak. Mr. Park, their teacher, stood at the front of the class. A hologram of a planet with a thick, poisonous atmosphere spun slowly behind him. Today, we continue our study on extreme adaptation, Mr. Park said. A species does not choose its home. The home chooses what the species must become to survive. He pointed at the hologram. The life on this world produces natural filters in its lungs. It is a brilliant, if unpleasant, solution. Gene barely listened. He leaned over to his friend. Hyan. See her? He whispered, nodding toward Sumin. She gets special treatment in every physical test. They say her bones are denser. What does that even mean? It's not fair to the rest of us who train hard. Hyan looked uncomfortable. I don't know, Gene. Maybe we just don't understand what it's like there. Understand what? Gene said, a little louder. A few students nearby turned to look. That she gets to do less work for the same grade? It's because people are scared of the word Deathworld. It's probably not even that bad. Mr. Park heard the talking. Gene, is there something you would like to share with the class about adaptive biology? Gene saw his chance. This was the perfect moment. He stood up, his chair sliding back. All eyes were on him now. Actually, sir, there is. I think all this talk about theory is a waste of time. He took a deep breath and turned, his gaze locking onto Sumin. She finally looked up from her datapad, her expression calm and unreadable. Gene pointed a finger directly at her. I challenge you, Sumin. A real test. No weapons, no special tools. Just you and me. A simple contest of endurance. The last one standing wins. Or are Deathworlders only tough in the stories? The room went completely silent. You could only hear the hum of the lights. No one moved. A challenge like this was not normal. It was raw and personal. Hyan grabbed Jin's arm and tried to pull him back down. Gene, stop this. Sit down. He hissed, his face pale with worry. Gene shook him off. He kept his eyes on Sumin, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and pride. He was sure she would refuse. He was sure she would look away. Proving that he was right about her. Sumin placed her datapad down on the desk. The soft click sounded very loud in the quiet room. She looked at Gene, then at Mr. Park. Her voice was soft, but it was clear and firm. It did not shake. I accept your challenge. A wave of whispers went through the class. They couldn't believe it. Gene was one of the best athletes in the human student group. Sumin was the quiet girl who kept to herself. Mr. Park looked from Gene to Sumin. He did not look happy. He sighed and rubbed his forehead. This is not a standard class activity. It is reckless. He paused, thinking. However, it is a direct example of physiological difference. A live demonstration. He looked at Gene, his eyes serious. Very well. We will use the multi-environment gym. 1 hour. And Gene, you understand the school's safety rules apply. You are responsible for what happens. Gene just smiled, a wide, confident smile. He had gotten what he wanted. He would show everyone that he was the strongest. He would prove that Sumin's reputation was just a story. He looked at Sumin, expecting to see fear or anger on her face. But there was nothing. Her face was still a calm mask. She gave one small, slow nod. Then she looked down at her datapad again, as if the challenge was already over. Her calmness annoyed him. He would wipe that calm look off her face soon enough. The hour in the gym could not come fast enough for him. The walk from the classroom to the multi-environment gym felt like a parade. The entire class moved as one group, their whispers creating a constant, buzzing noise around Jean and Sumin. Jean walked at the front, his steps quick and full of energy. He could feel the eyes on him. He smiled and nodded at a few friends, playing the part of the confident hero. Hyan walked beside him, his face still tight with worry. "Jean, listen to me," Hyan said, keeping his voice low. "This is a mistake. You don't know what she can do. They call her world a Deathworld for a reason." Jean laughed, but it sounded forced. "Reasons like what? Bad weather? I've seen the videos of Baekdu. It just looks rocky. It's all a show to make them seem special. She's just a quiet girl, Hyan. I'll prove it to everyone." Behind them, Sumin walked alone. She did not look at anyone. Her eyes were focused straight ahead on the corridor. Her hands were tucked into the pockets of her uniform. A girl named Ji fell into step beside her. Ji was one of the few people who ever talked to Sumin. "Sumin, you don't have to do this," Ji whispered urgently. "You can tell Mr. Park you changed your mind. No one will think less of you." Sumin glanced at her friend. Her expression was the same as it was in class, calm and unreadable. "He pointed a finger," she said simply, as if that explained everything. "That's a stupid reason. His pride is hurt because you exist. Don't let his pride hurt you." "It won't," Sumin said. Her voice was so quiet Ji almost missed it. She walked on, and Ji knew there was no more discussion to be had. They reached the gym. It was a massive, circular room with high ceilings. The walls were lined with panels that could simulate different weather and gravity. Today, it was set to the station's standard, comfortable for most species. The floor was a soft, durable mat. Mr. Park led them to the observation deck, a room with a large glass wall looking down into the gym. "Jean Sumin, you will enter the gym now," Mr. Park said. His voice was formal and serious. "The rules are the same as Jean stated. This is a contest of endurance. The last person standing wins. There is to be no striking intended to cause serious injury. No weapons. Do you both understand?" "I understand," Jean said quickly. His eyes gleaming, Sumin gave a single, slow nod. "I understand. Then you may begin." Mr. Park pressed a button, and the large door to the gym floor slid open. Jean strode in first, pulling off his uniform jacket. He wore a simple t-shirt underneath, showing off his well-defined arms. He started stretching, doing lunges and rolling his shoulders. He wanted to look the part. He wanted the class watching from above to see an athlete preparing for a fair fight. Sumin walked in after him. She did not take off her jacket. She simply stood near the door, her hands still in her pockets. She watched Jin's warm-up routine with no expression on her face. She looked small and out of place in the huge, empty gym. The observation deck. The students pressed against the glass. Hyan stood at the back, unable to watch but unable to look away. He chewed on her thumbnail, her eyes fixed on Sumin on the gym floor. Jean finished his stretches. He turned to face Sumin. She hadn't moved. Her stillness was starting to annoy him. "Anytime you're ready," he called out, his voice echoing in the large space. "You can give up whenever you want. Just say the word." Sumin finally took her hands out of her pockets. She did not get into a fighting stance. She just stood there, her arms hanging loosely at her sides. "The challenge was last one standing," she stated, her calm voice carrying clearly. "Not combat." Jean felt a flash of anger. She was trying to change the rules. She was trying to weasel out of a real fight. He decided he would have to make the first move. He would end this quickly and show everyone what a real fighter looked like. He moved forward, not running, but walking with a purpose. He planned to grab her, use her own momentum to throw her to the ground. It would be fast and clean. As he got closer, she still didn't move. She didn't raise her hands to defend herself. She just watched him approach. He was right in front of her now. He could see the fine details of her face. Her dark, calm eyes. He reached out, his hands closing around her upper arms. His plan was to spin her and take her down. The moment his hands gripped her, his confidence shattered. It was like grabbing a steel beam. Her arms were not soft muscle. They were solid, like dense metal wrapped in cloth. He tried to pull her, to unbalance her, but she didn't budge. Not even a little. It was as if he was trying to pull the floor itself. A sharp, electric pain shot from his fingers up into his shoulders. His muscles strained, but they had no effect on her whatsoever. A look of pure, uncomprehending shock spread across Jin's face. This was impossible. He was strong. He could lift heavy weights. He could beat anyone in his class in a wrestling match. But this girl, who looked so small, was rooted to the spot. Sumin turned her head slightly to look at his hands on her arms. She seemed more curious than threatened. She spoke, and her voice was still quiet, but now it sounded like a fact from a textbook. My home world, she said, has a gravity of 4.7 g. My skeletal density is 4 times the human standard. My body is my primary survival tool. The words washed over Jin, but he barely understood them. All he understood was the impossible solidity of the girl in front of him. The pain in his hands and shoulders was real. The fear starting to curl in his stomach was real. He let go of her arms and stumbled back a few steps, his heart hammering in his chest. He looked at his hands, half expecting to see broken bones. The class in the observation deck was utterly silent. No one was whispering anymore. They were all just staring, their mouths slightly open. The game had changed, and Jin was just beginning to realize he was no longer the player he thought he was. He was something else entirely. Jin stood a few steps away from Sumin, his chest heaving. It wasn't from effort yet, but from shock. The pain in his hands was a dull, deep ache. He flexed his fingers, trying to make the feeling return to them. His mind was racing, trying to understand what had just happened. She felt like solid rock. Her words echoed in his head. 4 times the density. It was a number from a science lesson, not something attached to a person. He looked at her. She still hadn't moved from her spot. Her arms were back at her sides. She was just waiting. Her calmness was the most frightening thing of all. She wasn't breathing heavily. She wasn't scared. She was just there. A hot wave of embarrassment washed over Jin. He could feel the eyes of the entire class on him from the observation deck. He saw their stunned faces through the glass. They had seen him fail to move her. They had seen his shock. His face grew warm. He couldn't let this be the end. He had to do something. He had to make her react. Fine, he said, his voice louder than he intended. You're a good statue, but let's see how you handle this. He decided to change his approach. He wouldn't try to grapple her again. He would use speed and strikes. He lunged forward, not to grab her, but to kick at her legs. He aimed a swift, hard kick at her shin. It was a move that would have dropped anyone else in class. The moment his foot made contact, a jolt of blinding pain shot up his leg. It was like kicking a reinforced metal post. A sharp cry escaped his lips, and he hopped back, clutching his throbbing foot. He had hurt himself far more than he could ever hope to hurt her. Sumin glanced down at her leg, then back at him. There was no anger in her eyes. No satisfaction. If anything, there was a faint hint of, what? Pity? It was worse than anger. Stop this, she said, her voice still low. You cannot win this way. Her words fueled his panic and shame. Why won't you fight back? He yelled, his voice cracking. He was starting to feel desperate. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to be the strong one. He was supposed to be the winner. There is no need, she replied. Her simple logic was a wall he couldn't break through. The challenge was to be the last one standing. She was still standing. He was the one dancing around her, hurting himself. He refused to listen. The pain and the humiliation were a fire in his blood. He came at her again, this time swinging a fist at her shoulder. It was a controlled punch, not meant for the face but meant to show force. His knuckles connected with her shoulder with a solid, meaty thud. The pain was instant and shocking. Felt like he had punched a concrete wall. He cried out again, shaking his hand. His knuckles were already red and swelling. He was breathing heavily now, from pain and from the growing, chilling fear. This was impossible. She was impossible. He tried one more time, a weak, half-hearted shove against her chest. It was like trying to push a mountain. She didn't sway. She didn't even tense her muscles. She was just immovable. He was exhausting himself. His body was screaming in protest. His foot ached, his hand throbbed, and his shoulders still felt the strain from his first attempt. He was sweating, his hair sticking to his forehead. Sumin, in contrast, looked exactly as she had when she walked in. She was perfectly calm, perfectly still. She finally moved. It wasn't a fast movement. It was slow and deliberate. She took one single step towards him. The sound was not loud, but it was unmistakable in the quiet gym. The floor panel beneath her foot let out a low, metallic groan. When she lifted her foot, Jean saw a slight, but clear, dent in the hard, durable material. It was a small thing, but it was the most terrifying thing he had ever seen. It was proof. Proof that the weight she carried was not a story. It was real, and it was immense. The final piece of Jin's confidence shattered. The truth of her words finally crashed down on him. The challenge was to be the last one standing. He was struggling just to stay on his feet. The pain in his leg was sharp. His body felt weak and shaky. Every breath was a struggle. The strain of his own attacks, the jarring impacts against her unyielding body, and the dawning, horrifying understanding of what she truly was, took its final toll. His legs, already bruised and trembling, could no longer hold him. They buckled underneath him. His knees hit the soft mat with a soft thud. He knelt before her, gasping for air, utterly and completely defeated. He had not made her raise a single hand in her own defense. He had lost by his own actions. He had broken himself against her. He looked up at her, his eyes wide with pain and a new, raw terror. She stood over him, not in triumph, but with that same terrible, pitying calm. The last one standing was her. The contest was over. From his knees, Jean looked up at Sumin. The world seemed to have narrowed to just her face and the pounding of his own heart in his ears. The pain in his body was a distant, throbbing ache compared to the cold terror that was now filling him. She was not a person. She was a fact of physics and evolution that he had been too stupid to understand. Her dark eyes held no victory, no gloating. They held a quiet, profound understanding of the vast distance between them. It was a look that said she had known how this would end from the very beginning, that he had forced a being who lived every moment under a crushing, invisible weight to prove her endurance. And she had, simply by standing still. The immense gravitational pull of her homeworld wasn't just a fact from a file. It was a part of her, a burden carried in every cell, a force that made his schoolyard challenge a deadly joke. The humiliation was a fire that burned away his last bit of strength. The physical trauma from kicking and punching her unyielding body had sent shockwaves through his system. But worse than all of that was the psychological shock. His entire view of the world, his place in it, his own strength, had been proven completely and utterly false in the last few minutes. His mind could not process it. It was too much. His heart had been working hard from the exertion, beating fast and hard to supply his straining muscles with blood. Now, faced with this final, insurmountable truth, it faced a new kind of strain. The terror and the utter defeat created a pressure it could not withstand. For a second, Jin's vision swam. The image of Sumin standing over him blurred. He felt a strange, fluttering sensation in his chest, like a trapped bird beating its wings against a cage. It was frantic, and then it was still. There was no more pain, no more fear. There was nothing. Jin's eyes lost their focus. The proud, defiant light in them simply went out. His body, which had been kneeling upright, slumped forward. He collapsed onto the mat. His head hit the soft material with a quiet, final sound. At the observation deck, there was a moment of confused silence. Hyen was the first to understand. "Jean," he whispered. Then he shouted, "Gene!" Mr. Park's face went pale. He slammed his hand on the comms panel. "Medical emergency in the main gym. Now!" His voice was sharp and loud, cutting through the rising panic in the observation room. Students were crowding the glass, their faces etched with shock and fear. On the gym floor, Sumin looked down at Jin's motionless form. Her calm expression finally changed. It was not a dramatic change. A slight tightening around her eyes. A slow, deep breath. She had known this was a possibility. She had tried to warn him. She had told him to stop. But he had not listened. The consequence was now lying at her feet. The gym doors hissed open and a medical team rushed in, their boots making soft, quick sounds on the mat. They carried equipment. They gently rolled Gene onto his back. One of them checked for a pulse at his neck. There was a tense silence as they worked, their movements efficient and urgent. After a moment, the lead medic looked up at Mr. Park in the observation deck and gave a single, grim shake of the head. It was over. The official report would later state the cause as acute cardiac arrest brought on by extreme physical exertion and systemic trauma. But everyone who had been in that room knew a different truth. They had seen it happen. They had seen the boy who challenged a force of nature break himself against her. Mr. Park ushered the stunned, silent class out of the observation deck. Their lesson was over. Hyan looked back one last time, his face a mask of grief and horror. Jie waited by the door for Sumin, her own eyes filled with tears. Sumin did not look at the medical team as they prepared to take Jean away. She did not look at anyone. She simply turned and walked towards the exit. Her steps were the same as they had always been. Slow, deliberate, and heavy. The weight of her world, and now the weight of his fate, was forever a part of her silent stride. She had accepted a challenge to see who would be the last one standing. He never rose again. The days that followed were quiet and heavy. A strange silence fell over the parts of the station where the human students lived and studied. The loud conversations in the hallways were gone. The easy laughter was missing. Gene was not there anymore. His empty seat in the advanced xenobiology class was a dark spot that everyone saw but no one looked at directly. Mr. Park stood at the front of the class. The hologram of a planet was behind him, but he was not talking about it. His face was serious and tired. "The investigation is complete," he said. His voice was calm but firm. "The official finding is that Jin's death was a tragic accident. It was caused by a heart condition that no one knew about, made worse by extreme physical activity." He looked around the room, making eye contact with several students. "This is a reminder that the rules for our safety are there for a reason. Pride can be a dangerous thing." The students listened, but they all knew the official words were only part of the story. They had seen what happened. They had seen Gene kick and punch Sumin, and they had seen how it hurt him. They had seen him fall. The official report did not mention the look on his face when he realized he could not move her. It did not mention the sound his foot made when he kicked her leg. The truth was something they all carried inside them now. Sumin was not in class that day. She had been given permission to stay in her room. The station administrators had talked to her for a long time. They decided she was not to blame. She had not thrown a punch. She had not even fought back. She had just stood there. But being not guilty in the rules did not make the weight any lighter. In her small room, Sumin sat on the floor. She was not crying. She just sat, looking at her hands. She remembered the feeling of Jin's hands grabbing her arms. She remembered the shock on his face. She remembered his voice yelling, "Why won't you fight back?" She had tried to explain. She had told him it was not a fight. He had not listened. He was so sure of his own strength that he could not see hers until it was too late. Her friend, Ji, came to see her. She brought some food, but Sumin did not touch it. "It wasn't your fault," Ji said, her voice soft. "Everyone knows it. He challenged you. He was stupid and proud." Sumin looked up. Her eyes were the same dark, calm pools as always, but now they held a deep sadness. "I know it was not my fault," she said, "but I also knew what would happen. I knew my body is a weapon. I knew he would break himself on it. I still said yes." She looked back at her hands. I accepted the challenge. I am a part of what happened. Yi did not know what to say. She understood that Sumin's guilt was different. It was not about breaking a rule. It was about knowing the power she held and allowing a foolish boy to be destroyed by it. A few days later, Sumin returned to class. The room went completely silent when she walked in. She did not look at anyone. She went straight to her seat in the back and opened her datapad. The silence continued. No one knew how to act around her. They were not angry with her. They were afraid. They had seen what she was, and the knowledge frightened them. She was a living reminder that some gaps in power cannot be crossed. Hyan, Jin's friend, watched her from across the room. His grief was a sharp pain in his chest. He missed his friend. He was angry at Jin for being so proud and so stupid. But he also felt a strange feeling when he looked at Sumin. It was not blame. It was a kind of awe. She had not wanted to fight. She had only done what was necessary to meet the terms of the challenge. She had simply existed, and her existence had been enough. Life on the station slowly went back to normal, but it was a new normal. The students were more careful with their words. They thought twice before boasting or challenging others. The story of what happened in the gym was told in whispers. It became a warning, a lesson about the dangers of pride and the true meaning of strength. Sumin continued her studies. She was still quiet. She still sat alone. But now, when people saw her walking through the corridors, they saw something different. They saw the girl from the high-gravity world. They saw the girl whose simple step could dent the floor. They saw the girl who was the last one standing. She carried herself with the same quiet grace as before, but everyone could now feel the weight she bore. It was the weight of her home planet, a world of crushing force and harsh survival. And now, added to that, was the weight of a memory. The memory of a boy who challenged her to a contest he could never win. The memory of the moment he fell and never rose again. She walked on, a solitary figure, carrying the burden of two worlds on her strong, silent shoulders.